All right, so again, good morning, everyone. Before we kind of jump into the work for today, I do want to point something out to everyone's attention. So, tomorrow, Wednesday, the 8th, we are going to be having an assessment. Now, before you freak all the way out, let me explain because you don't need to freak out at all. So, tomorrow, we're going to be doing a practice check in and comprehension quiz. So, in Mr. Seymour's class, when we do quizzes and tests, there are two different types of quizzes and tests that we do. I'm so sorry. The first type is a check in quiz. Honestly, check in quizzes are going to be a little bit easier than the second type, which are comprehension quizzes. So, check in quizzes, I am literally just kind of checking in to make sure that you're just kind of paying attention. So, the questions will be a little bit easier and they won't make you think as much. Basically, for a check-in quiz, if you are paying attention in class and you've kept up with your work, you should do well on a check-in quiz. Yes.
I'm going to see if I remember. Our check-in quizzes usually have true or false and multiple choice.
Yes, that's correct. Or they have like true, false, multiple choice, maybe an easier fill in the blank sort of thing,
Okay.
right? Now, our comprehension quizzes. With a comprehension quiz, I'm actually checking to make sure that you understand and really comprehend what you have been taught. So, comprehension questions will be more in depth. Okay? With comprehension questions, multiple choice answers might have, well, they can have more than one correct answer. Okay? Comprehension questions or quizzes will have written responses that you have to, like short answer or long answer, have to write and explain your thinking. Comprehension quizzes may have like pictures for vocabulary words instead of like definitions. There will be things that you have to analyze, stuff that you have to put together, things that you have to determine. Now, when we do comprehension quizzes in class, I will give you at least a week's warning before we have a comprehension quiz so you have time to study. And like we talked about, does that mean you wait till the last night and try to cram?
Nope.
No, I mean, you can if you want to, but don't be surprised if you don't get a good grade. Okay? Check-in quizzes, I might just give us a 1 or 2 day warning. I mean, hey, we have a check-in quiz tomorrow. Because again, if you've been paying attention in class and know what we've been talking about, 1 or 2 days of studying should be more than enough time. Okay? So now, back to the quiz tomorrow. It is a practice quiz. So your grade on the quiz does not have anything to do with the grade you're getting for the assessment. Basically, the way the quiz tomorrow works is if you do the quiz and then we go through the test correction process together and you do test corrections, you will get the 25 assessment points. So it doesn't matter if you get them all correct or all wrong. The quiz tomorrow, the goal of the quiz tomorrow is not for me to see what you know. The goal of the quiz tomorrow is for you to understand what check-in quizzes and comprehension quizzes are like. Okay? Since that's the goal of the quiz, the scores aren't going to count. So that's why I said you don't need to freak out. Okay? Are there any questions about the quiz tomorrow? Yeah.
Will it just be about like AC and BC?
So, yeah, it'll be questions about AC and BC, Common Era, before Common Era, timeline stuff, fact, belief, and opinion. So the things that we've talked about in class. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you with the stuff that we've had, similar questions, but they'll be written at like the check-in question level, and then you'll see a similar question written at the comprehension level. So you can kind of compare the differences. Okay? All right. So again, you can study if you'd like, but don't stress yourself out. Don't study too much over it because again, it's just so you can kind of see the difference between the types of questions. Okay? Any other questions on that? And remember, we're doing the modified schedule. So class will be about 30 minutes. So we're going to come in, we're going to get to that real quick, and then you'll have time to kind of go over it. Okay, so it's not going to be a huge quiz. It's just going to be some questions so you can see the difference. Okay. Okay, so for today, we're going to kind of continue with timelines. Okay. So if you were here last Friday, you got that class set sheet of paper. And it talked about horizontal timelines, it talked about vertical timelines, and it talked about tiered timelines. Truthfully, those are the biggest three types that we will use in this class. So just as a refresher, what does a horizontal timeline show? Yeah.
Underneath?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Have some timelines. Horizontal. This is the most common timeline that you will see. The horizontal timelines are left to right, and horizontal timelines are used to when events happen in chronological order.
Thank you. Yeah. So, a vast majority of timelines that you will see will be horizontal timelines. Right? Horizontal timeline looks a lot like a number line, even though it is not. Okay. So, when we think about a horizontal timeline, okay, when we think about a horizontal timeline, it's used to show how things happen in order. And it always goes from left to right. So the number that was furthest to go is always going to be over here. So this is always going to be the oldest thing. Okay? The number on a horizontal timeline that's over here is always going to be the newest thing. Okay? For those of you who did not, well, show of hands, how many people finished the Ed puzzle? Okay. So for those of you who finished the Ed puzzle, this will be a little bit review. For those of you who haven't, you'll hear this again in the Ed puzzle. One of the important things to understand with a timeline is that it needs to be consistent, right? Timelines, it doesn't matter how much time is on your timeline, but it needs to be measurable. So for example, if, let's say this is 1,000, and let's say that this is 500, this right here should not be okay. Your timeline should be consistent. So when you're looking at timelines, when you're making timelines, the big numbers should be consistent. So you tell me, what should this be?
0. No. Or not 0, 1.
1.
That's a good question.
1.
C.
Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't matter. You could have put B, C, E, or C. Either one worked, right? So you see how this is consistent. Okay. So on your timeline notes, we're going to add just a couple of things real quick. Okay. So the handwritten notes that you started before, you're going to add this too. So this is just Timeline basics. So some of this stuff, like we said, was in the Ed puzzle. Some of it was not. So the first thing we need to remember is that your time intervals need to be consistent. Okay, so like we said, especially the big numbers that are on the timeline, they should be even and equal because that's a big part of how we read a timeline. Okay. Second thing that we need to know for our timeline basics okay? If you see a zigzag line, that means that there's a break in your timeline. So you know how we just got done saying that your timeline needs to be consistent? So this is the exception to that rule. Okay? So if we look, are these times consistent? No. But we can put a zigzag in here to show, hey, we know this isn't consistent, but in order for our timeline to work, we're going to do this. Okay? So the zigzag is kind of the cheat code for this. Okay. Now, does that mean if you're making a timeline and you mess up and it's not even, you just throw a zigzag in there to fix it? No. All right, that's not what it's for. But again, this is for, let's say that you're like analyzing wars or something, wars in Afghanistan, right? And maybe there was a gap where there was peace for like 1,000 years. Well, you don't want to put all that time on your timeline because it make your timeline huge. So you just do the little zigzag to say, hey, we're skipping time here. It's like a little time warp. Does somebody have a question in here or did it get answered? I thought I saw a hand go up. No? Okay. Okay. Okay, so the third thing with our timeline basics. Like we said before, if it's a horizontal timeline, it's always read from left to right. Okay? Horizontal timelines are always left to right. Now, what about a vertical timeline? So, can somebody tell me what are vertical timelines used for? Yeah.
Vertical timelines can be read from top to bottom or bottom to top. It's important to read the start and finish dates on a vertical timeline. And vertical timelines are best used to track events over time.
Good. So, our vertical timelines. Okay. let's say you wanted to know how much time had passed for something. Vertical timelines kind of make it a little bit easier to see, right? Because it's just like reading a bar graph. Okay. So with our vertical timelines, we use those to see how much time has passed. Horizontal ones put things in order. Horizontal kind of lets us know how much time has passed. Now, here's the important thing to remember. Will a horizontal timeline tell you like how much time has passed? Yeah.
Yeah.
Will a vertical timeline tell you things in chronological order?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just easier to see the information that you're looking for. So you can use this chronologically. It's not wrong. It's just a little bit harder to find the information you need. You can use this to figure out dates. We know how to do that. It's just a little bit easier on this one, a little bit harder on this one. Okay?
Are these like only for horizontal? I mean, vertical. These
What?
next like notes.
So this part right here, this is still kind of the timeline basics. So these are things that apply to all timelines. Okay? We're not really going to go into the specific ones because you should already have that in your notes from what you did. So that's a good question, but this is stuff that's just like 4 timelines through. So remember, vertical timeline and horizontal timeline can show the same information. Okay? It's just a matter of making it easier for the person to analyze. Do you have a creeper on your shirt?
Hmm?
Is that a creeper?
Like from Minecraft?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Just the
Below it, there's
The
like
underneath.
Oh.
Okay.
You like PS4s, don't you?
I know you hate me now. You hate me now.
No.
No,
I don't
Hate
play
is a
either.
strong word.
it's a strong word.
I really think.
I know
I'm glad
Chase
Ty
does.
doesn't hate me.
I play both
You like
consoles.
Play both consoles. All right. So, last couple things for our timeline basics. Okay. So we talked about what a vertical does, what a horizontal does. What about tiered timelines? So from what we read, what do tiered timelines show us?
Tiered timelines can also be called multi-tiered timelines. Tiered timelines has more than more data set of info. Tiered timelines are best used for compare and contrasting knowledge.
Okay. So this is very important. So tiered timelines, we use those to show 2 different things. Now this is going to be important because people get confused over this. So sometimes horizontal timelines are too big and get split in half. Okay? This is not a tiered timeline. Okay? So because of this, I'll give you a moment to write it down. So this is going to bring us to our next basic. We have 2 things left to get to our notes, and then I'll explain what we're going to be doing today. Okay. So for every timeline, I don't care if it's horizontal, vertical, tiered, you always, and this is actually going to sound pretty familiar from maps, read the title and labels. Okay. Always make sure you read the title and labels, because that's going to help you to know, is this a horizontal timeline that's been split in half, or is this 2 different timelines? Because if it's one timeline that's split in half, the title of it's going to stay the same. The years are going to keep going in order. If it's a tiered timeline, you'll have 2 different labels. Okay? Then the last thing that we need for our notes on timeline basics timelines have 3 basic written parts. Okay? So the first part you'll see on a timeline are going to be the dates. Okay? Second thing are going to be the labels. And the third thing are going to be events. So, our dates obviously are going to be the numbers. The labels are going to help us to organize. And the events, that's going to be what happened. Okay. So I'm going to show us from the book here what I mean with the different parts of a timeline. Okay? So if we look, here's the timeline here. So remember, each timeline is going to have, well, of course, our title and everything like that, but it's going to have the numbers. So if we look at this timeline, our anchor numbers are in the middle of the timeline. Okay? And if we look, is this a horizontal timeline or a vertical timeline?
Horizontal.
How do we know it's horizontal?
Because it's sideways.
Because it's going horizontally, right? But remember, we need to look at the labels too. So the labels, which is the second part of a timeline, for this, the timelines in our book, the labels are off to the left. So this timeline has one label, topic events. Okay? Do you see where it says topic events? Yeah. If there's just one label, what kind of timeline is this? It's a horizontal timeline. Now let's pretend that there were two labels on here. What kind of timeline would that be if there were two? It would still be, it's still going this way. Tiered. Because remember, it has more than one label. Okay? So, that's kind of a little overview of our timeline. So here's what you are going to do next. And it will probably take pretty close to the end of class. First off, just a moment. This is a class set of paper. Please do not write on it. Okay? But what you are going to do after you have finished the ed puzzle, actually, I'll have you get these removed, that way I can check it through. After you finish the ed puzzle, you're going to come back to my desk. I will check and see and make sure that you finished the ed puzzle and got at least 80%. I will give you one of these papers. Okay? The directions are in this mauve-y, purpley color. Okay, so when you come back, I'll give you a paper and I'll tell you a topic. I'll say topic 1, topic 2, whatever. You're going to get one of the textbooks off of the shelf on page Roman numeral 28. That's going to be XXVIII. Roman numeral 28, that's all in here. There's a table of contents that tells you what page to look on. Okay, we figured out, I think it's topic 5, the topic on China. They gave you the wrong page number in the book. Okay, it says it's page 136, that's not where China is. I want to say that China is going to be like page 176 or something like that. Okay? You're going to go to the page with the timeline, and you're going to answer these questions. Now, here's the deal. This is not a classwork grade. This is not an assessment grade. This is just something to do while people are finishing up their ed puzzle work. Since this is like not for a classroom grade, what will happen is you can earn live school points for doing this assignment. Okay? So, I see he had a question than you, so I'll get to a final answer. So, once you have finished watching the ed puzzle, you'll come back, I'll check the ed puzzle, I'll give you one of these, I'll tell you what topic. In order to earn your live school points, you have to get all the questions correct. Okay? If you get all the questions correct, you will get 1 live school point for each correct answer and then a bonus one for getting them all correct. Now, if you're thinking about it, that's a pretty good haul, isn't it?
Yep.
Right? Because that's basically 10 points. That's there are 9. 9. But if you think about it, that's a pretty inflated assignment, right? But since you're not getting graded for this, since you're not getting paid with a grade for this, I think that's fair, right? But here's the flip side. If you don't get them all correct, you don't get any points. Because here's what I don't want to have happen. Oh, I want to buy something at lunch today, and all I need, I'm just short 2 live school points. So I'm just going to answer question 1 and question 2 and turn this in. I'm not doing that. Okay? Need to get them all correct. Now, if you miss a question, you can go back and work on it again. Okay? So it's not a one-time deal. You can go back and work because I want to make sure we understand how to read timelines. Okay? Any questions on what we're doing with this? Yeah.
Can I use the restroom?
Once we get started working. You got a question? Or did I answer it? You had a question earlier. Did I answer it?
No. I did not have
Yes.
one. We're doing this just on the blank paper, right?
Yes, you're going to do this on a blank piece of paper. Okay? Any questions on any other questions on what you're doing today?
We're going to like neighboring codes after.
You're going to turn it in.